bilateral free trade agreement between the United States and India?
Yeah, I think the steps is essentially the interim trade agreement that has just been mentioned, which will go live on Saturday. And the next step would be the bilateral trade agreement. And at some point in time in future, we will possibly have a free trade agreement also with the United States. So those will be the progression in the US-India trade relationship. As I've mentioned many times in your channel, India and US are natural allies, both geopolitically as well as geoeconomically. They are largely complementary. They are exactly on the two halves of this globe, and they largely have been in the past providing a stabilizing effect on the rest of the world. So it's important that things go back to normal, and I think this interim trade agreement is a step towards that, and it's very much mutually beneficial. Clearly, it helps India because we have been hit by not being able to trade with US. We were able to overcome that hit. We were able to grow our exports. With this trade deal coming in, the Indian exports will go very, very sharply. Similarly, from a US perspective, they had been hit by inflation on the ground on products which really hurt the common citizens, which includes food and daily necessities. And with this trade agreement with India, many of those costs will come down for the US. And also many of the feedstock coming from India will feed into the manufacturing for the US industry. So it will make US more competitive as this particular trade deal gets into the ground today.
And Jaijit, does cutting tariffs to 18% meaningfully improve competitiveness for Indian exporters, and who is set to benefit immediately?
Yeah, a whole range of industries from textiles to many of the agricultural exports for that matter, chemicals, and so on. Also, we need to keep in mind that who are the competitors for some of these industries. If you look at textiles, for example, it's largely Bangladesh and Pakistan and Vietnam and so on. And clearly, the trade deal that India has got is better than any of these other competitors in the textile industry. So India would tend to gain. In fact, overall, for all other products also, excluding EU and Japan and UK, India's got the best trade deal for US. And as you mentioned, it's the largest market. It's a $38 trillion market. Having said that, some of the provisions of Section 232 is still in place. For example, I did not hear anything about steel and aluminium. And therefore, those are sectors where India is competitive, but we don't see an exemption. And hence, those are still issues to be resolved as we move forward. But overall, it's a deal which provides India significant competitive edge compared to the others who are in the same industry.
No mention of India halting the purchase of Russian oil. Do we know anything else about that?
There has been no official declaration from either the Indian side or the Russian side. In fact, Russia has officially said that they haven't heard anything which implies that India is going to stop purchasing Russian oil till the time Russian oil is sanctioned. As of now, there is no sanction against the Russian oil by the United Nations. And India has repeatedly said that it will follow the rule-based order. And as per the rule-based order, it is free to continue to purchase Russian oil. If there is any other subtext to the deal between India and the US, it is not there in public. And so we'll have to wait and see how that thing develops.
We've seen, of course, especially within the last few weeks, couple of months or so, many close US allies visit China. We have, of course, seen that huge trade deal agreement signed between the EU and India. How much of this do you think was rushed by the United States, seeing all these developments happening around them?
It's a common belief and perception that the EU-India trade deal kind of pushed the US to accelerate the deal with India, because in what we understand, the deal is pretty much the same as what it was in April of 2025. So nothing significantly has changed in the wordings of the deal. And therefore, the only reason why the deal got precipitated at such a short notice after the EU-India trade pact is possibly because of the EU-India trade pact, and that's the general belief. So it appears that the EU-India trade deal played a significant role in accelerating the US-India trade deal.
And Jaijit, how realistic is a full US-India bilateral trade agreement in the near term?
Well, that's a question that's still open because there are still many outstanding issues that needs to be resolved. But from what we hear from the U.S. administration and also whatever little we hear from the Indian government, it does seem to be around the corner. And not just that, given the past record of the U.S. walking out of deals, including the fact that it put 50% tariffs on India against what it had signed at WTO, even the significance of a deal remains a question mark. Is the deal sanguine from the US perspective remains a question mark. So it'll always be a developing story in that sense. Personally, I believe that before the first half of this year, we should be able to wrap up the India-US BTA. But the question really is, even if we wrap it up, if things change on the ground, will the US continue to honor the deal? And that's a separate question altogether.
Jaijit Bhattacharya, thank you so much for taking the time.